If you are someone that has watched both Eminence and Shadow and Overlord, you will know there's a lot of similarities with both of these series. Both these series have overpowered protagonists, both these series have support characters that are very loyal to the protagonist and will do whatever the protagonist tells them to do, and in both these series there are cases in which both the protagonists think that they know everything when in reality they don't, or sometimes they're oblivious to the things that are happening around them. But in today's video, I'm not just going to simply list everything that's similar about both these series because that's not the point of this video. No, instead, I'll just be focusing on the two main protagonists of both these series, Sid and Ainz, because there is one common thing that both these characters have that is extremely similar, and is the fact that they both have very insane minds. You'll notice very quickly just how twisted their mentalities are and just how insane these kind of people are, because some of the things they say or do are not things that you would expect from a normal person to be saying or doing, and that's going to be the primary focus of today's video. So let's just begin. And of course, spoiler warnings, if you have not watched both these series, then I highly recommend that you actually do watch them before watching this video, because I am going to be spoiling things that happen in both these series. So with that out of the way, let's just begin. So starting with Ainz, since I watched Overlord before Eminence and Shadow, Ainz is one of the supreme beings of Nazareth. But of course, something that you have to keep in mind is that Overlord is an isekai, so there's actually things that happened before, and it's very interesting. You see, the way this story even started is the fact that there was this player, once he finds out that his favorite game is about to be shut down, he decides to spend the last remaining hours of the game and just simply play it. But of course, he gets sleepy, and then all of a sudden, once he wakes up, he realizes that he's in his game and is the character that he's always played with this game, and that is Ainz. And in the beginning of the series, you could easily tell that this person was not used to this new world that he was now in, and he was not especially used to seeing the fact that the characters around him that are very loyal to him are very insane individuals as well. And in the beginning of the series, he plays along because he realizes no matter what he says or does, these characters are still going to be loyal to him, and their views on him are not going to change anytime soon. But as the series goes on, you slowly start to see that Ainz is changing as a character, but not only that, but his mentality as well. You see, in the beginning of the series, Ainz wasn't really a huge fan of a bunch of death and destruction happening around him, and whenever one of the people who were very loyal to him came up with just a solution of just killing their enemies off just like that, Ainz will always try to find another solution to the problem without anybody dying whatsoever. However, as the series continues, his viewpoints start to change very drastically, as one thing he starts to point out very quickly is how death and destruction isn't really a big deal for him. He could see a bunch of people dying, he could see a kingdom or a town being completely destroyed, but even if he sees that, he's not going to feel sadness or anger or nervousness or being scared. He's just going to see it as something normal and something that's always going to happen no matter what, which is already alarming because no normal person will ever react like that whenever they see death and destruction. But I think the best season that showed just how insane Ainz's mind is season 4. This season first started out slow, but then turned 100 really fast towards the end, and it's because Ainz managed to destroy an entire kingdom. Now you may be wondering, why did he destroy an entire kingdom? Well, there's actually two reasons why he did that. The first reason was because a very smart individual, using smart with massive quotation marks, decided that it would be a good idea to steal some of Nazareth's goods that were heading towards the kingdom, because you have to keep in mind that it was during this time that the kingdom and Ainz were both working together. But in reality, this was just simply a way for Ainz to take over the kingdom without using any force. But thanks to Philip's genius plans, Ainz decided to declare war to the kingdom because they betrayed their trust. But the reason why he also decided to take over this kingdom and destroy it was because of a personal reason as well. You see, before he destroyed this kingdom and took it over, before he did that, he actually had a conversation with the prince/king candidate Zanuck, in which Zanuck was trying to figure out why Ainz declared war to the kingdom and why he wanted to take it over to begin with. It was during this conversation that we learned that Ainz's mind is completely insane, and that is because he openly admits that the only reason why he's doing all of this is because he wants the people that are around him to be happy, even if it means costing the lives of other people and taking away their happiness. As long as he and as well as his people are happy, that's all that matters, which, let's be honest, that's not the mindset that a normal person would have. It's very clear that Ainz simply only cares about him and his people and doesn't care about anybody else, because in this moment we get to realize that he's willing to destroy other people's happiness and destroy other people's lives as long as it benefits him and his people. As long as he and his people are fine, that's all that matters for him, really. But it was also during this same conversation that Ainz actually starts to like Zanuck, and that's because Zanuck, while he is aware that there's nothing he could do to stop this plan from going into motion, he still had the courage to talk to Ainz and see if there was a possible solution, which sadly there was none. But Ainz appreciates how he was still trying to protect his people, because for him that is something that a leader slash ruler must do. He shouldn't just be focusing on himself, he should also be focusing on the people around him, and that is what Zanuck was doing. But sadly, this would be the last conversation that Ainz would have with Zanuck, because then later on Zanuck would be betrayed by his own people and was killed in order to make an offering to Ainz, which angered Ainz so much to the point that he realized that this was just another reason to take over this kingdom and destroy it, because he couldn't believe that there were people in this kingdom that were willing to betray their own just to save their own skin, and that angered Ainz a lot. And then towards the end of season 4, Ainz accomplishes what he was going to do, and that is take over the kingdom and fully destroy it. And it was at this moment that made me realize that Ainz isn't the hero of this story. Now, I know there are many examples before these events happened that show that Ainz wasn't the good guy, but I think him taking over the kingdom and completely destroying it was just more proof that he was not the good guy of this story. In fact, if this was any other series, he would be the antagonist of that said series. So in this case, we have an example of a protagonist who sees nothing but death and destruction as completely normal, decided to declare war on a kingdom for really not a great reason. I mean, I know they stole from him, but it's not like this was the kingdom's doing. It was just because of one idiot, but that didn't matter because that just gave Ainz more of a reason to declare war to the kingdom, because that would make the process of taking over the kingdom more faster, and things the necessary evil needs to be done in order for him and the people that he cares about to get their own happiness and be able to have a happy life. If that doesn't sound like an insane individual, then I don't know what is. Now, moving on to the next character, that being Sid slash Shadow, whichever name you use often. This is another example of, once again, a person with an insane mindset. Not only is Sid oblivious to the things that are happening around him, but for some reason, whenever there's a situation that is happening in the Eminence and Shadow, he always use it as a game or something that is just simply fantasy roleplay, when that's far from the case. But before we talk about that, let's just start from the beginning and talk about how Sid's life was before he got isekai. You see, Sid was already an insane individual in the real human world. He wanted to be powerful, but he realized that the human body had limits. But that all changed once he got isekai and became a very overpowered character. However, instead of using his powers to do good or show off his powers, he did the complete opposite. He actually decided to want to become a background character and not show people how powerful he really is. However, let's just talk about the many examples that shows us just how much of an insane individual Sid is, and why in some cases he acts like a complete psychopath based on what he says or does. So let's just jump into the examples. The first example that I'm going to be talking about is when Sid's sister actually gets kidnapped by a bunch of people. Now, you would think that Sid will actually take this situation seriously, considering the fact that one of the people from his own family has just been kidnapped. However, Sid uses the situation as a way to entertain himself and to show everybody what kind of character he wants to be, that being Shadow. So already we have a case of somebody using a very serious situation for just their own entertainment. And that's not even the worst part of it as well, because even before this all happened, the way he created Shadow Garden to begin with is also just as insane as well. If you have watched the series, you will have known that the first member of Shadow Garden is Alpha. However, the way she even joined this organization to begin with was because Sid was just lying to her and making up these stories that there was this cult of Diablos that needed to be stopped, and that's the reason why he created Shadow Garden. He clearly didn't just say this in order to just fulfill his roleplay, but anyway, this convinces Alpha into joining Shadow Garden. Now you may be saying, but this actually is true, there's actually a cult of Diablos, but you have to keep in mind, Sid had no idea about this. He just thought that he was just making stuff up and was making up an entire story when that was far from the case. So if you think about it, Sid just straight up manipulated Alpha into joining Shadow Garden, and it's not like she's the only one, because later on, as you all know, there will be other members in Shadow Garden as well. Not to mention that during the attack of the school, the school that he was attending, instead of Sid taking action very quickly and stopping the bad guys from doing any more harm, he lets it all happen just to once again fulfill his entertainment. And while yes, he does eventually stop the bad guys and eventually the bad guys are defeated, it took him a really long time to do something, and this situation could have probably ended way sooner had he actually intervened and done something about it, but instead he once again used a very serious situation for his own entertainment without noticing just how badly things could have gone if he didn't get involved anytime soon. And then the last example will be the kidnapping of Alexia. Now, Alexia and Sid were going out. I'm saying going out with massive quotation marks because they were just really in a fake relationship for their own purposes. But later on in the series, she actually gets kidnapped by a group of people, this being people who are associated with the cult of Diablos. Now, what do you think Sid does in this situation? Because this is a very similar situation that happened with his sister. However, it seems that Sid didn't learn anything from the other situation because he just lets it all happen once again and actually just does nothing about it. And keep in mind that Alexia was in a very horrible condition. She was not being treated right. So yeah, if that doesn't show you just how much of a crazy person Sid is, then I don't know what to tell you. Like, all these examples are perfectly showing us just how much of a psychopath Sid actually is. Because while yes, he did help them out eventually, he didn't do it of the goodness of his heart. He did it because it fulfilled his roleplay. So based on all these examples and all these situations that has happened in Eminence and Shadow, what kind of character is Sid? Well, Sid is a very oblivious character who has no idea what's going on around him, takes very serious situations and uses it for his own enjoyment, manipulated people into joining his organization when in reality he had ulterior motives. All these things are just examples of what a psychopathic person can be. And I know many people are going to say that, you know, regardless, Sid is still a very enjoyable character. Don't get me wrong, I still find him a very enjoyable character, but once you actually start to pay more attention to what kind of personality he has and the actions he does, you'll notice very quickly that he's not a normal person. He's a very crazy individual, an individual who once again thinks that everything that's happening around him is all just a bunch of fun and games, and it's all just for the purpose of his own entertainment. And with that, that's pretty much the entire video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.